So this episode today is going to be talking about elementary qualities and how they influence sporting performance and how a equal sporting performance score between two different athletes can be produced by two different means. So before we dive into the analysis of two different sporting performances, we need to understand what these elementary qualities are. So elementary qualities are typically, well, they are qualities that are independent of each other. They include qualities such as absolute strength, reactive ability, so the speed at which someone reacts to a stimulus, starting strength, so early stage rate of force development, and essentially late stage rate of force development, and the duration that someone can produce force. There are a couple more, but those are the ones we're going to focus on today. These elementary qualities are independent of each other, meaning that the means at which you develop these are different. So the way we develop maximal strength is not going to be the same way that we develop someone's reactive ability to a stimulus, and the way we work on someone's reactive ability to a stimulus is not going to be the same way that we try and to increase someone's early stage rate of force development. Thus, it's easy to see that these qualities are independent of each other, but they actually work together to produce larger qualities or more specific abilities that the athlete displays. And this can be seen through different types of sporting performances of equal magnitude, but achieved through different ways. For example, it's commonly talked about how a sprinter can be force dominant or velocity dominant. The force dominant sprinter tends to accelerate much better, but when they reach top speed sooner, as opposed to a velocity dominant athlete who takes a little longer to reach velocity, but their top velocity is faster. At the end, they produce the same 40-yard dash time, but the means in which they produced it is quite different. Because each athlete produced the performance through different means, the analysis and training outcome and intervention for that athlete is going to be much different. So if someone who's force dominant, you're obviously not going to spend a lot of time developing force. Someone who's velocity dominant, you're not going to spend all the time working on top speed. It's critical to understand that these elementary qualities are what the driving factors behind these performances. So absolute strength is probably much more present in the force dominant athlete, while maybe starting strength or the ability to reactively use the stretch shortening cycle is much better in the velocity dominant athlete. Thus, understanding the specific elementary qualities, one can analyze a performance and see what elementary quality might be their weakest link in that chain. And when you find the elementary quality that's the weakest link, technically that's going to be your limiting factor in performance. And so once you determine it and train for that specific elementary quality, theoretically speaking, performance is going to get its largest improvement from improving that quality. The next question then becomes, how do we actually test for these elementary qualities? Well, it's not as straightforward as one would like. Essentially, developing a performance profile would be best. So we already train in the weight room, and you probably got an idea of what kind of absolute force someone can produce. But maybe using something as an RSI score, so reactive strength index, to understand how they utilize the stretch shortening cycle. Maybe using something along the lines of a reactive test in regards to reactive to a stimulus to understand how quick their reaction time is. Maybe using something along the lines of an unloaded counter movement jump compared to a loaded counter movement jump to understand their speed strength and strength speed qualities. All these tests can be used in a non-lab setting to get a better understanding of what the elementary qualities are. You use those elementary qualities, you analyze their performance, and based on specific weak links that one might notice in those elementary qualities, training can then be designated to improve those qualities. However, it's important to note that just because something is weak doesn't mean it's a limiting factor. For example, if we're working on a badminton athlete and you notice that their squat isn't very strong or very high, absolute strength might not be specific quality that's going to be a driving factor behind their performance. So to naturally make the assumption that because something is weak, it is a limiting factor is not necessarily correct. That's where the sports coach has to understand the elementary qualities of the movement and what elementary qualities play a specific role for that given movement, thus understanding what elementary qualities actually need to be worked on and which ones could actually be the limiting factor, as opposed to just seeing a weak link and assuming that it's a driving factor behind performance. So basically the take-home message would be understand elementary qualities, find ways to analyze elementary qualities, understand the elementary qualities that could be driving your athlete's specific performance, finding the weakest link, and developing it. That's one of the better ways, in my opinion, to actually quantify your training and get a better understanding of what exactly is the driving factor behind this athlete's performance. It's critical to understand, too, that an athlete who is force dominant doesn't mean they should not be strong, because some of those elementary qualities per individual might play a larger role for their innate biomechanical structure as opposed to another athlete. So to make the assumption that strong is bad or that strong is necessary could be on an individual basis. And again, that's for all elementary qualities involved in that performance. Thanks for listening. Hope you guys enjoyed. Much appreciated.